Well, we're on the podcast now with Dakotah Popehn, joining us from Minnesota, I believe. Dakota, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm super honored to be on. Thanks for having me.
I was put in contact with you through Mark Janik from Sports Tours International. How do you know Mark?
Yeah, me and Mark go way back, it feels like. I don't know how we were introduced. I think maybe like a Facebook group. Um, but yeah, he's, originally started Destination Marathons, who they went up to Grandma's Marathon every year. And I happen to be like a big fan of Grandma's Marathon, and I go there every year. So just through like our time going up to Grandma's Marathon, I would occasionally jump in and say hi to his group that he would be bringing up there. We've just gotten to know each other, and of course, they bring people everywhere. Like Boston, I see them pretty often,
Mm-hmm.
and other races. So I've had the great honor of getting to know Mark, and he's a really great guy. And what they do with now Sports Tour is super awesome.
Definitely. Are you going to be at Grandma's Marathon again this year?
Yeah, it's kind of my bread and butter. Whether I'm racing the marathon or the half marathon, I'm not sure yet, but I'll never miss a Grandma's Marathon weekend.
They're pretty
Nice.
spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you guys been up before?
Yeah, we ran it in, 2018,
I don't know. 18?
I think. Yeah.
Angie was working
It
on
was
doing a
my
marathon.
first year.
Okay.
She was working on doing a marathon in every state, and that
Oh,
was her Minnesota race.
Yep.
that was a
And,
good choice.
and it's fantastic. Other than the fact that it was really like there's a lot of rain the day before,
Yeah.
and then there was a whole bunch of fog on the lake
Yeah.
during the marathon, so I couldn't see any of the views, but
Oh,
it was still great.
maybe that's for the better though, because you do pop out, and when you can see the lift bridge from like 18 miles out, so you're kind of like sometimes that's daunting to be like, I have to get all the way over there, and it looks like an ant's bridge. So maybe to not be able to see that's for the better mentally.
Did you grow up in Minnesota?
I did, yeah. I grew up about an hour north of where I live now.
Oh, cool.
There's a lot of great runners from Minnesota. What's the deal?
You know what? I think it's days like yesterday and today. Yesterday we got like a good 3-4 inches, and our running trails were still packed full of people. And to now
Wow.
it's like -5 degrees out, and I saw a bunch of people running this morning. I think we are very good because we're gritty. We
Yeah.
deal with adversity every single day on every single easy run out here.
Yes, for
It doesn't
sure.
make me want to live there, but it makes me want to admire you guys.
Yeah, that was not a selling point, I guess. In the summer, it's really amazing, though, I promise.
So I understand that before you got into running, you played hockey. What led to your transition over to focusing on running?
Yeah, I mean, like a true Minnesotan, I had to play hockey. So, uh, I was pretty good at it. I was starting varsity my 8th grade year, and I really fell in love with it. When I was young, I watched the movie Miracle, if you're familiar, about the 1980 Olympic team. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be an Olympian in hockey. I could just felt like my heart was called towards that. And I just fell in love with everything about it. All my friends were hockey players all season, like all summer long. I was practicing hockey, doing hockey camps. And somewhere in my freshman year, my mom just kind of started to see that I was having like, I would have really high highs with hockey, but I also had some pretty low lows. And, a big loss really hurt me mentally. And probably in a way that was not healthy. I couldn't see that at the time, especially being whatever 15 years old. So she just said, I think I believe in your dreams. I think you're a really amazing athlete, but you should really broaden your horizons. Go try other sports. When you look around at like the greatest athletes of all time, most of them are multi-sport athletes when they're young. So
Hmm.
she wasn't saying like I don't believe in your dreams as a hockey player, but she was saying I think by you starting a different sport, you could be a better hockey player. And I wish she was here today for me to like have that conversation with her, because she's
Hmm.
literally the reason I'm an Olympian. I
Mm.
Wow.
very unlikely would have been an Olympian as a hockey player, especially as a goalie. So I'm super just super blessed that I had a mom who could see that, because I think we live in a world now where focus is so important at a young age. Like people put their kids in soccer camp and it's all day long, all year long, and that's great. But I do think there's a lot of value in trying new things.
Mm.
Yeah.
So at what point did you know you wanted to focus on becoming a professional runner? Was that sometime in college or post-college, or how did that evolve?
That ended up happening after, like slightly after college. I was helping my college coach give a prospective athlete a tour. So he always liked to have either an athlete on the team or an alumni kind of help the athlete or walk the athlete around campus, I guess. And he was talking me up because I had an okay college career, but it was worth bragging about to this, incoming athlete. So I think the parents thought I was like a stud, and I was very average, I'd say. So the parents were like, "Well, what are you gonna do now that you're graduating? Like, what are you gonna keep running?" And I was like, "Yeah, like casually, like I'll run, marathons. I'll do some local 5K, 10Ks, whatever." I didn't even really realize there was like a whole world of professional running. Of course, I knew like the big names like Kara Goucher, Des Linden, but there's like a whole sub level to that too. So I just kind of gave, a nonchalant answer, and my college coach looked at me and was like, "I think you could qualify for the Olympic trials in the marathon." And like, if I was a cartoon, you would have seen like my head explode. I was like, what does that even mean? Like, I had no idea. So then the next day I went into his office with a pen and a piece of paper, and I said, "Tell me what I need to know to do this."
Hmm.
And yeah, he set me up with my current team, Minnesota Distance Elite. I was like, we'll say, quote unquote, walk on to the team right away. I wasn't quite at the level that I needed to be a part of this team at the time, but they were willing to take a chance on me, which is super awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you were able to qualify for the 2020 US Olympic trials. You competed in that. And then, of course, the 2024 Olympic trials, where you placed third, which was amazing. So it wasn't, like an automatic thing. What was that process like of, qualifying for the first Olympic trials, going, maybe not having the showing that you wanted, and then still having that determination to come back again in 4 years?
Yeah, when I qualified, so actually my first true road marathon was at CIM, and all the years start to get so blurry as I'm
Yeah.
getting older. I believe it was like 2017, maybe 2018, and I actually dropped out of that first marathon. And I remember, like, well, number one, I called my mom and I was like, this is not for me. This is no fun. I feel so embarrassed. And she was like, "No, you're absolutely going to try again. You can't base it all off of one day." So, once again, if I could give her a huge thank you, I wish I could, because she got me on my next starting line, which was Grandma's Marathon.
Mm.
Hmm.
But I also kind of was a little mad at my college coach because I was like, "Hey, that wasn't like, it's not easy to qualify for the Olympic trials. Like, that was a big struggle." But of course, I got back on the horse and qualified in 2018 at Grandma's Marathon. And the Olympic trials for 2020, I was there having the time of my life. Of course, I was nervous and very excited, but I very well knew that I would need like 40 women to have the worst days of their lives in order for me to make a team. So I was there like learning and watching and trying to just see what the most successful women are doing, because
Hmm.
I knew that it was very unlikely that I was going to make that team. Of course, did I have little like things in the back of my mind, like maybe, but I knew it was a very long shot. So,
Hmm.
I felt like that really set me up going into that Olympic trials, knowing that, I could just enjoy it and I could learn there, so that when I fast forward to 2024, I didn't have to have like so much anxiety. I'd already kind of done this thing, like I knew what to expect. What
Anything stick out to you that you learned at 2020, like watching all those other women?
Yes, that like in the first, I was with the lead pack for maybe 6 or 8 miles in 2020, and the people who were leading in those first 6 to 8 miles were not the women who made the team. I feel
Hmm.
like that's what I really, really learned, and I took forward to the 24 trials, is that I did not want to be the one breaking the wind or setting the pace.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of patience is involved, like knowing what you're capable of, but also staying in your zone until the time is to, to speed up and to start taking that lead.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think we see the most successful marathoners everywhere kind of take that tactic. Very rarely are they going out on their own and setting their own pace and leading the way. They're usually sitting back and letting other people do the work. I think we can all relate to how much easier it is to run, behind or alongside somebody than out on your own.
Hmm.
So can you talk about what your Olympic experience was like? I'm sure, there's so much you could say. I read that you were listening to smooth jazz on the bus to the marathon start line. So it sounds like you were really focusing on being in a specific place mentally, physically, trying to stay calm. Just kind of walk us through what stuck out to you.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very lucky that I'm a super at this point I'm very young in the marathon, but I am very experienced. I think I've run 16 marathons now.
Wow.
And what I always look back at is the marathons that I'm the calmest the morning of are the ones that I have done the best at by far. And the ones where I'm really worked up and anxious are where I really kind of self destruct.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was listening to a little Kenny G on the
Nice.
bus ride to the start line, which was, super long, and it was like 4:30 in the morning, I want to say. I didn't stay in the village, so I had to get to the village at like 3:30. And a funny little story is as I'm walking in, because you have to go through almost like a TSA security line. As I'm walking in, all these other athletes are also walking in, but they're in their skirts and their heels and they're wobbling. They had just had like the fun night of their life, and I'm like, I don't know who's gonna feel worse in 6 hours, me or you.
Yeah, because the marathon's like the last day, so they were
Yeah,
already in party mode, but the
totally.
marathoners
They were
were.
out at the clubs having the time of their life, and like good for them. I was excited that they got to have that moment, but I was kind of like, oh, I can't relate to you guys right
Yeah.
now. I can't even
Mm.
imagine.
I
So
imagine it's probably hard for those other Olympians to relate to the marathoners. They're like, why do you guys want to run that far?
yeah, for sure. And I think the marathon specifically in running, like track and field, is very different. Like our every athlete, I suppose, in some way, like their body is the way that they make money. But I think that track is very and marathoning is very much like every decision I make throughout the day is going to help or hurt my goals. And I don't think that's the same for every sport. So like
Hmm.
even when I do have a really great race, I don't necessarily go celebrate the same way somebody else in a different sport might or could.
Hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, I was just trying to stay super calm the morning of the marathon. I was super lucky that my coach was out on the start line too, so just to have some like normalcy,
Yeah.
and just know that it was any other marathon, and regardless of if I took first or last, the people who care about me are going to be proud of me, and that's the truth for every single race I start.
Mm.
Who's your coach?
I'm coached by Chris Lundstrom. He coaches all of Minnesota Distance Elite.
Wow.
That's really cool. So, one of the really cool moments of the Paris Marathon that I remember was seeing a boy named Jackson running alongside you and cheering for you around the 35K mark. Talk about what that was like, how it affected your race.
Yeah, he is the coolest kid ever. I'm sure. I don't know if he followed up at all, but like I've gotten to meet him since, and
Oh,
Hmm.
he's amazing. He is quite the little runner himself. I think we're gonna see him running in the Olympics in years down the road. But honestly, like 35K, I'm such an American that I don't even know what mile mark that is, but it's late in the race.
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, you're not feeling good at that point. And I had missed my bottle at 30K, so I was kind of feeling down in the dumps, and there just wasn't a lot for me to work on ahead visually. There was a girl who was kind of coming and going, so felt like I was in no man's land, but really just trying to stay present because so much can happen at the end of a marathon. And all of a sudden this boy who is screaming mine, like when you're in a different country and somebody is screaming your name specifically, like it still gives me chills to hear, like I can hear him still.
Hmm.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, first of all, it's so amazing that whoever this little boy is knows who I am, but also more amazing that he's keeping up with me for as long as he is. And I think it just reminded me it's so important to have fans and to have these people who support us on the sidelines, because 26.2 would be a lot less fun without, all these people cheering us on. So it just made me really, really grateful for the fans of this sport for sure. And Jackson's amazing.
So where is Jackson from?
He's from New York. So when I went out to run the New York City Marathon, he skipped his first period of school on a Wednesday, which happens to be gym class, to go for a run with me.
Oh, wow.
So I think his gym teacher probably let it go.
I think that was probably an excused absence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got his workout in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So after you finished 16th, which was amazing. And then didn't you get engaged after the race?
Yes. Just not to pump myself up, but I was 12.
Oh, 12, sorry. Yes.
That's okay. Yeah, so I got to the finish line. I had to go through media and then finally saw my boyfriend at the time, and walked over to him. I was just so excited to see him, and all our family was there, and I gave him a hug, and he got down on one knee, and I literally had no idea. I had been making jokes the entire time because we were in Paris for a month. And I was like, what a perfect place to get engaged. So I kept making jokes like, oh, do you think we should stop in that jewelry store right there? Do you think we should go look at rings? But I had no idea it was actually coming or it was going to happen. So it made a pretty great day even better for me.
Yes, what
Wow.
an incredible experience.
Yeah. Congrats.
Great story to tell for the rest of your life.
Pretty iconic in Paris.
So you talked about how every decision you make is really important as a professional distance runner. You can't go out and party hard like maybe some of the other athletes do. One thing that we've heard you talk about is having your sleep like dialed in and the importance of sleep. I actually read in Runner's World, they said that when you were in the final weeks training for Orlando, the Olympic trials, that you were sleeping 10 hours every night and committed to a goal of drinking a gallon of water every day.
Yeah. It was challenging. I was going to the bathroom a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about, beating other women, there's two different types of races you run, right? Like the ones where you're going out for your PR and you're challenging yourself. And then there's races like the Olympic trials where you're competing for a spot against other women. And when I think about that, everybody does the training. There's no more secret training or sauce, I like to say. Like, we all do the same thing. We all do the 16 miles at marathon pace or effort, and we all do the LT work. None of that is going to put me heads and shoulders above anybody else. So the things that can really, make me better are the things that you're doing outside of running, in my opinion. So when I was like trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to make it so I have the highest possibility possible to make this team? I was like, well, we have to focus on recovery and obviously like fuel and hydration. Those are just the most important things. So just in general, my parents loved to brag about this. I've never had a bedtime. I've always been somebody who's like, I love to sleep. And if I don't get enough sleep, I'm pretty cranky and like a non-functional human. So I've always prioritized sleep really highly. And, 10 hours is a really tall task to be sleeping that long. So at least being in bed for 10 hours. And I'm really lucky to be sponsored by a pillow company, Lagoon, which makes it super easy to like want to be in bed and be comfortable. So I'm thankful for them. And I think that makes a huge difference when you're like really investing in your recovery.
For sure. What Lagoon pillow do you like?
I'm an otter, and so is my husband, actually.
Oh, nice.
Otter gang is the best gang.
Trevor and I both got hippos.
Oh, you're okay. I mean, the thing is, you can't lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Lagoon, they're actually based in Minnesota as well, right?
They are. So when they reached out and they wanted to, do a little partnership, I was super excited about that because it's similar to the Grandma's Marathon for me. Like, I wanna uplift companies and races that I genuinely care about and want to see succeed. I want to make some money in this sport, but like what's more important to me is that I am authentic, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, what's cool about them is they're in there's the sleep space. So obviously, they're selling sleep sets and pillows, but they're bigger picture for them is optimizing sleep and creating content, partnering with people like you, like with athletes to help them optimize sleep. So it's more about like training. It's also it's sleeping well, but also the impacts on training. So I like that emphasis that they have at Lagoon.
I totally agree for sure. Because when you get more sleep, you can train harder.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So is there anything else that you do like to make sure that when you're in bed that you're actually getting good rest? Because I know like Angie, sometimes you track your sleep and
Are you wearing an Aura ring? Do you have
I
one of
sure
those?
am. Or a
Aura
gang.
users a lot unite.
Yeah.
so it
I
basically tells you like deep rest, deep sleep versus shallow sleep, right?
Right, and I think something that I've learned recently, I've got quite a few books behind me, and quite a few of them are about sleep because I love to learn about sleep. I think it's so amazing. Is that like the beginning part of your night when you're getting into like the really deep sleeps is when you're doing like all the muscle recovery, and that's when
Hmm.
you're getting like your human growth hormone. So for me, like if I know I'm going to get a night of sleep, that's not going to be, my ideal 9 to 10 hours, making sure I'm padding the beginning of my sleep rather than the end. I mean, at the end of your sleep, you're getting more of like the memory retention stuff. So it's like, I can live without a few more memories, but I need to get my human growth hormone in the beginning of my sleep. So I'm really conscious about
Hmm.
making sure I'm going to bed at the same time every night, or at least like roughly the same time. And yeah, just making sure that beginning of your sleep is the most restful for sure.
I'm like you, Dakota. I don't understand people who like to stay up late. I am like putting myself to bed. I'm like a cranky toddler if I don't get sleep.
I can testify.
I'm like, if someone needed to torture me, they would break me on the sleep thing before anything, probably.
Totally. Minnesota is very weird. I know this is everywhere in the country, but it gets dark very early here in the winter, sometimes by like 5 p.m. It's dark,
Mhm.
and I'm like, well, you think we could go to bed yet? As soon as it's dark, my body's like, I'm ready.
Do you do anything else like sound machine, sleep
I
mask?
I do a fan and like earplugs every night. I really do love the sound of like it almost reverberates your own breathing, I think. And I enjoy that. I just use a sleep
Hmm.
mask. My husband hates this, but I love it to be like 63 to 65 degrees.
Yep.
um, we avoid dogs in the bed, and I do magnesium before bed every
Mhm.
night also.
Huh. And is there a certain time of day where you just like cut off the food because you know you're not going to sleep as well if you're eating past a certain
Or
hour?
what about caffeine? That's a big one too.
So caffeine, caffeine is my struggle for sure. I've always got coffee next to me. I do
She
try to cut that
folks that are listening, she said that while showing us her coffee mug.
off. um, I do try to cut off caffeine by around this time, but I usually negotiate another one somehow. But I guess I don't think about food too much just because if I'm hungry, like as a runner who's going 130 miles a week, I don't want to say like, oh, I'm not going to eat because it's going to ruin my sleep, I guess, or disrupt my sleep. I know that it definitely has an impact on sleep, but I feel like the impact of not fueling when you're hungry is greater, probably especially a female runner.
And as actually a person who is wanting to optimize the recovery, having some protein before bed actually, kind of boosts that. So, I think there is some good research about if you're going to eat something, being more on the protein carb spectrum. Um,
Rather
Hmm.
than like a dessert, a bowl of
right.
ice cream.
A
Yeah.
bowl of ice cream chips, like maybe that will not be
Totally. Yeah,
optimal,
I,
but
I am usually going for something more protein heavy if I'm eating pretty close to bed. I worked with a nutritionist for a while who told me that's like a really great way to actually help sleep. So that's usually
Mhm.
what I navigate towards, I suppose.
Okay, one final question on this topic, and this is interesting how similar you guys are because Angie's really a sleep zealot, I should say. Um, do you actually travel with your pillow when you go places, or do you just use hotel pillows?
So it depends on the type of travel. Like when I'm flying, of course, I can't really pack that king size pillow. But like I'm gonna go to North Carolina for training for the next 2 months, and I could not imagine not having that pillow with me, to be honest. Actually, even when I was out in Paris, I almost had Ryan from Lagoon send me a pillow out there because I didn't travel with it again because I
Mhm.
was very, very close on space. But I got out to our Airbnb and I was like, this is horrible. Like,
Oh.
you really, especially maybe as I'm getting older, realize, how cranking your neck at night can affect
Hmm.
you the next day.
Yeah, especially when you get to be over 40, it's like you
Oh yeah.
sleep on the wrong pillow, you like turn your neck the wrong way and you're like, "Oh," you know.
Yeah, for
Yeah, it's so easy.
sure.
You're not even trying to do anything strenuous. You just
Right. I just
look
got
when
out of
someone
bed
calls
wrong.
your name. Yeah. Get out of bed wrong. Man.
So we like to talk about mental strength because that's so important in endurance running. What do you do specifically to strengthen your mental game? And do you have any mantras that help push you forward?
Yeah, I've been using the same mantra since I was in college, and that is I am strong, I am fast, my speed will last. It's kind of, I mean, that's hardly qualifies as a mantra when it's that long, but I just like repeat that to myself when I am just can't get myself out of a dark zone. And I
Hmm.
just feel like I need something like rhythmatic to just
Hmm.
kind of breathe to maybe and calm myself down. But otherwise, I mean, every single day I'm working on my mental strength. When I'm on the treadmill this morning and I'm at 7 miles, I'm going 10, and I'm just so freaking tired of looking out this window. Like, and kind of putting myself in the middle of a race and being like, I'm going to feel this way at the Boston Marathon. I'm going to want to be done before the race is over. And how am I going to fight through that? So then I put myself right next to Helen O'Beary and I'm like, okay, like
Hmm.
now I'm, trying to be efficient and focusing in on like every movement and my core strength and all of that. And like during workouts, I'm doing that same thing when you get to the point where it's like, oh, I don't know if I can get that other mile in. I don't know if I can sustain this pace. You're just trying to draw on all your race. You're trying to like project all your race times and just trying to say like, oh, okay, this is going to happen in a race. So how can I get myself out of this so that when this happens in Boston, I'm like, oh, I've done this before. I felt bad in a workout and I've persevered. Like it's just makes it easier, I think. So that's an
Yeah.
every single day thing for me.
Mm. And that's excellent because it does come down to the things that you practice on a regular basis, not those like big moments that sometimes are more spectacular, but it's those daily disciplines that I really like that. Yeah. I think that would really help our listeners, so the next time that you're in the middle of a slump in your workout, you just have to remind yourself that you are like building a foundation that, for your future race or whatever your goals are.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that when you're racing, no matter how much training you do, no matter how perfect your training was, a race is going to get hard. And so those hard moments in practice are like a perfect time to say like, oh, I can get through a hard moment for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Well, Boston's going to be exciting this year.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's star studded.
Yeah.
I feel like every year they put together a field that's like best Boston field ever, and then the next year it's like best Boston field ever.
Keep one upping on the
Do
star
you,
power.
I mean, some of these ladies, obviously from like Africa, are training in warmer temperatures than you are. Have you ever thought about like during spring training going somewhere warmer to get your
Yeah,
miles in?
I'm going to North Carolina in February. So,
Okay,
I mean,
nice.
it's not balmy by any means there, but it's warmer than here. 50 degrees will feel a lot better than -5. And like I went to Florida last year before the Olympic trials. I've
Yeah.
uh kind of played with going to altitude. I've been there a couple of times in Albuquerque, and I think my recovery just goes down so deeply that I'm not able to sustain my training. So
Hmm.
we're opting for sunshine, vitamin D, and warm weather instead of
Mm,
thin air.
yes. Well, Boston can be such a wild card in terms of weather. It can be cold, it can be hot. It's just, you never know what you're going to get. So I think that's smart to get a variety of training temperatures. You get the cold from Minnesota, you're going to get some North Carolina, like medium temperatures. Um, Talk to our listeners who are training for a spring marathon and, maybe they live in a cold climate and it just it's tough
Right.
because, it feels like, the winter is never going to end and maybe they're, stuck on the treadmill more than they want to. What advice do you have?
I would say like start putting together a playlist of all your absolute banger. Like when you're on the treadmill and it just like that song just happens to come on and you're like, heck yeah, like those bangers, like put those together for like your long runs. Or if you've got a TV show that you're like, oh, I'm just so addicted to this right now. Like we just started Squid Games and that's how I feel.
Yep.
Like practice being really patient and saying like this is only a treadmill show for me now,
Mm,
and now like it's a treat that I get to go
yeah.
watch this. So if you're stuck on the treadmill, like being very mindful of having those things that you can rely on, because even the mentally strongest of us need that on the treadmill, because it's very hard to feel like you're a rat
Yeah.
on a little wheel like that. But going out for runs in this cold weather, like I went out yesterday when we had like 3 inches of snow, and knowing that like effort means so much more than actually hitting the paces when it's crummy footing and weather outside, and knowing that when it does warm up for your spring marathon, you're gonna be like, when you go outside and you don't have 6 layers of clothes on, you're gonna be like, whoa, I'm like extra fit right now.
Flying.
Yeah.
Okay, so final question. We saw on Instagram that you and Carrie Tollefson got Olympic rings tattoos, and we always
Yes.
ask Olympians if they have that. Oh, there you go.
I
It
love
looks
it.
good.
Cute.
It's on her forearm, right hand. So, is there a story behind that? You two going to get that tattoo?
Yeah, so Carrie Tollefson was one of the original members of well, back then it was called Team USA Minnesota. Now it's Minnesota Distance Elite. And she's just kind of, and I mean this in the nicest way, I don't mean this in an annoying way. She's just always around. She lives
Mhm.
in the cities now, so like we'll see her out on River Road, which is a big running trail basically, and she's just like this um information fountain for us. She's always
Hmm.
giving us advice and support and love. Anytime you see her, she's always lifting us up. And I've gotten to know Carrie really well over the last, gosh, I've been on the team for 7 years now. I'm feeling old all of a sudden. And she's just, she's like our big sister, is what we always say.
Yeah.
And so when she made the team I believe she made it in 2000, and she just never got her rings for whatever reason, didn't want to at that time, and then felt like maybe too much time had passed. Then when I made the team, I had immediately talked about how I wanted to go get my rings. Like I wanted to get my rings February 4th. Like I wanted to do it that day or the next day. And she was like, I would love to do that with you. It's something I've been thinking about doing also. So we waited until the Olympics were over and we went together, which is super special because
Nice.
I feel like her being on the team and having made the Olympics already, sometimes you need to see something before you can do something. And of course, I didn't see Carrie make the team because I wasn't really a runner at that point. But just knowing that somebody on the same team that I was on did it, like, is so inspiring. And she's got all this knowledge and is always willing to help us. So it felt really special to go do that together.
Aw.
Are they matching tattoos pretty much?
Yes, yeah, same exact spot.
Aw, I love
Hers is
that.
really cool because she's she obviously does announcing and she does interviewing. So when she is holding a microphone, she's either here or she's here, like holding it for somebody else. So it's always showing.
Yeah.
That is really cool. I think the last time we talked to her, Trevor, you persecuted her about not having her rings tattoo yet. So
No, I just
Ooh,
said
maybe you pushed her.
I know.
I just said you got to flex that,
I
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. And yeah, it felt really cool to go
she's
do it with her.
she's
Yeah.
super nice,
She's an amazing
and
person. Yep.
like you said, like she's everywhere. I swear that I was watching the Minnesota Timberwolves the other night and on TV, and there was a local commercial because it's a local
Yeah,
broadcast, and I saw Carrie like
yeah,
just like she's on TV.
yeah, absolutely. Are you a Timberwolves fan by chance?
No, I was sorry.
No, it's okay. I got to meet Ant in the Olympics.
Oh,
That's
that's
the only
cool.
reason I asked.
Oh, that is
Oh yeah,
awesome.
Anthony Edwards. He's
He's an
amazing.
amazing
Yeah,
player. Yeah.
big fan.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I'm against the Timberwolves. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're respectable.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe last year more so than this year, but that's okay. It's a rebuilding year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still follow hockey and kind of, stay in that world a little bit?
Definitely, like the Wild are doing really well this year. My husband's a big basketball fan, so
Mm-hmm.
I guess in general, I don't really like go out of my way to watch hockey. So if it's on, like I'm paying attention or I'm reading news, like headlines about it, but we always have basketball on. So
Yeah.
I've become more of a basketball fan just by proxy.
Have you got to meet any other famous people through your career besides Anthony Edwards?
Yeah, I got to meet, I mean, I don't know how famous you think this is, but the mayor of Minneapolis, I thought his name is Jacob Fry.
Nice.
He was a professional runner back in the day.
Huh.
So we have that little running
Wow.
connection that way.
How cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Runners do great things.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be mayor someday, right?
Yeah, maybe.